So in today's video, something a bit different. Two identical chocolate bars, one with sweetener, one with sugar. Both are 80% chocolate. So how different will they taste? Do sweeteners taste similar to sugar or do they taste distinctly different? We're going to find out. So I'm in Montenegro, and in the supermarkets here there's so much ultra processed food. It's really hard to find foods that are not ultra processed. I don't know why people seem to tolerate such shit food in this country. It's quite ridiculous. But anyway, this is the only chocolate I could find which is 80% chocolate, and I only eat this style of 80% chocolate nowadays because I've got blood sugar issues, so I can't eat all the sugar which I used to eat in the past. So I want to answer now, which is better, sugar or sweetener? But in regards to the taste, because of the fact I've actually got this unusual opportunity to have two identical bars just with the different sugar versus sweetener. Like in England, you don't get two identical bars to make that comparison, so it's the perfect opportunity to have a look. So if you take a look at the sweetener version, you turn it over. Now, there's something really fucking interesting on the packaging. So, chocolate with no sugar added with sweetener. Ingredients: cocoa mass, fat reduced cocoa powder, cocoa butter, sweetener, maltitol, and flavour. Bit disappointing that it says flavour, not natural flavour, meaning it is an artificial flavour. That's the only thing I'm not so happy with this. But it's the next bit that's interesting. Excessive use can cause a laxative effect. Ooh. Now, interestingly, I actually think it's good that they have to put that warning on. Because let's be honest, if those warnings were enforced in England, an awful lot of food would have to have that warning. Now, that warning's because the sweetener, maltitol, doesn't absorb into your body that much. Meaning, because it doesn't absorb, it stays in your intestine. That makes it a laxative. That's exactly the same thing as what's used in the UK. Just in the UK, they don't put on the warnings. Because in the UK, maltitol is used a lot as a sweetener. Yet, they just don't put on the warnings. So, it's not that this chocolate bar's bad, it's just they're honest, when the UK is not honest. Take a look at the sugar version, and the ingredients are pretty much identical. Cocoa mass, fat reduced cocoa powder, cocoa butter, sugar and flavouring. So exactly the same, just sugar instead of sweetener. Shall we see what it tastes like then? So, the sweetener edition with maltitol. I personally prefer stevia as a sweetener because I feel it's more natural, but nevertheless maltitol is pretty good. Aspartame's the one which I refuse to eat. So we eat this. You can tell it's sweetened rather than sugar. It does taste a bit different. It tastes slightly like Advent chocolate, slightly. But you can tell that it's sweetened. It does taste a bit different. Now this one is the one with the sugar. Let's taste this. Similar, but that tastes so much more better. The problem here is I do have a sugar addiction because back when I was 3 years old and I got diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, the doctors told my parents I had to be fattened up. Give him as much fat as possible. Make him overweight. Do whatever you can to fatten up your child. They're not wrong by saying that because there is a problem with digestion and cystic fibrosis. So they wanted me to have lots of body fat because of my health conditions. That made me healthier and easier to fight off infections in my lungs if I had more body fat. The problem is, back when I was 3 years old, the doctors didn't understand the issue with sugar. Well, most people didn't really understand the issue with sugar back then. Also, the link between cystic fibrosis and diabetes wasn't known back then. There's a variant of diabetes called cystic fibrosis-related diabetes, which is ultimately diabetes caused by cystic fibrosis, but also not helped by the fact that people with cystic fibrosis were given very high sugar content, because most foods, at least in terms of processed food, most processed foods that are high in fat are also high in sugar. So, following the doctor's advice, my parents fed me loads and loads of chocolate bars, which did the trick in the sense of fattening me up. It made sure I was the correct body weight when, if you have cystic fibrosis, if you're not eating lots of fat, you get underweight very quickly. So, I did this job in the sense of keeping my body weight up, but I ultimately, I pretty much would give myself diabetes because of how much sugar I used to eat. Because all those chocolate bars I was being fed to fatten me up were 50% sugar. So, I was being nicely fattened up, but also given diabetes at the same time. Which is why nowadays I normally eat the 90% chocolate to avoid the sugar. So, would I eat this if this was in England? 80% chocolate, so good proportion of that is chocolate, but that is pretty good. No sugar, so good for my cystic fibrosis, but to be absolutely honest, it doesn't taste as nice as the sugar one. Maybe I'm a sugar addict, I don't know. Which one would I eat? Normally I'm eating those Lindt 90% bars, which are 7% sugar, which I feel is acceptable. That's an acceptable level of sugar. So I'm normally going for 90% rather than 80%. But if this existed in the UK, would I eat the sweetener version? Carbohydrate 31.6%, of which is sugar 1.2%. Yeah, so a lot less sugar, 1.2% sugar rather than 7% sugar on the 90% Lindt bars. But it doesn't taste that good. It tastes not as good as the sugar one.